The temptations that still whisper. Every temptation we face today echoes from the wilderness, where Jesus stood firm against the enemy and showed us what faithfulness looks like in the face of desire, pride, and false promises. In Matthew 4, we read about the temptations of Jesus by Satan. In those 3 moments in the wilderness, we see the embodiment of all temptations that still call out to us today: the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. We first saw this trio back in Eden. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. Genesis 3:6. Eve saw, desired, and took, and the same pattern has echoed through every heart since. John later names what was happening in that moment. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and pride of life, is not from the Father, but is from the world. 1 John 2:16. When Satan met Jesus in the wilderness, he brought these same temptations, but this time the outcome would be very different. The first temptation came through the lust of the flesh, and the tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." Matthew 4:3. Jesus had been fasting for 40 days. His body was weak, his stomach empty, and his hunger painfully real. Satan's suggestion seemed reasonable. After all, Jesus could easily turn stones to bread, but to do so would have broken his fast and placed physical needs above spiritual purpose. This was about more than food. It was about trust. Would he take matters into his own hands or depend on his Father's provision and timing? Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. He refused to let his flesh lead where the Spirit had called him to follow. Then came the pride of life. Then the devil took him to the holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down." Matthew 4:5-6. Here Satan tempted Jesus to prove himself, to stage a dramatic display that would force divine intervention and impress the crowds below. It was an appeal to pride, to power, and to recognition. But Jesus knew who he was. The Father had already declared, "This is my beloved Son." To leap from the temple would have been to doubt the Father's word and demand proof of his care. Yes, angels could have caught him. But true faith doesn't need to test God. It trusts him. Jesus refused to trade humble obedience for public spectacle. His glory would come, but not through a stunt. It would come through a cross. Finally came the lust of the eyes. Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in their glory. And he said to him, "All these I will give you if you will fall down and worship me." Matthew 4:8-9. This temptation strikes deepest of all, because Jesus truly did desire to reign over the nations. That was his divine right and destiny. The prophets had spoken it, and all creation awaited it. But Satan offered it without the suffering, without the sacrifice, without the cross. It was the right end by the wrong means, the glory without the agony, the crown without the redemption. You shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. He saw beyond the shimmer of worldly glory to the eternal splendor that only obedience could bring. Temptation itself isn't sin. James reminds us that sin begins only when we give in to it. But each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. Then desire, when it has conceived, gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is fully grown, brings forth death. James 1:4-15. That means temptation touches all of us. None of us escape it. But being tempted doesn't make us sinful. It makes us human. It's in our response where the battle is won or lost. When God took on flesh, he entered that same battlefield. He didn't watch temptation from a safe distance. He felt it. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Jesus didn't face hollow tests. Each temptation pressed on a real human longing, hunger, purpose, and glory, but he surrendered every desire to the Father's will. That's where the enemy strikes. He takes what God designed for good and twists it towards self-gratification. He offers shortcuts, not sanctification. For us, that means temptation often dresses up as something reasonable, even right. But sin is born when we pursue what we want without waiting on God, or when we crave what he never intended for us at all. And when Jesus resisted, Satan didn't vanish forever. Luke tells us that he departed from him until an opportune time. Temptation doesn't end with one victory. It simply circles back, waiting for weakness, fatigue, or pride. The same is true for us. Temptation isn't the mark of failure. It's the invitation to faithfulness. If Jesus, the Son of God, faced it and overcame, then we can walk the same path of dependence on the Father's word. We don't fight temptation with willpower, but with surrender, by letting God's truth speak louder than our desires. And every time we resist, every time we trust instead of grasp, we echo the wilderness victory of Jesus. Because the goal isn't just to survive temptation, it's to become more like the one who conquered it. When have we mistaken temptation for defeat instead of seeing it as a test of faith? How might our battles look different if we viewed them through the eyes of Jesus, trusting the Father's timing, his goodness, and his word? Let's talk about it in the comments. Where are we learning to trust God more deeply in our own wilderness moments?